NCIS ran for over 20 years and built the kind of audience loyalty that most television shows never come close to achieving. Viewers didn't just watch the show, they formed attachments to specific characters the way you do with people you've actually spent time with. And the thing about that kind of loyalty is that it makes every departure feel personal. 10 actors walked away from one of the highest-rated crime dramas in American television history, and almost none of those exits followed the clean narrative that press releases tend to offer. Behind the carefully worded farewells and the tearful final episodes were exhaustion, creative resentment, personal pain, and, in at least one case, a situation so volatile that it threatened to destabilize the entire production before a single camera had rolled on the new season. This is what actually happened. Pauley Perrette gave 15 seasons to Abby Sciuto, and in that time the character became something genuinely rare on network television. A face that millions of people genuinely looked forward to seeing each week. The pigtails, the tattoos, the towering cups of calf pow, and that warmth that cut straight through the procedural format made Abby the emotional core of the series in a way that no job title could fully explain. When Perrette confirmed she was leaving ahead of season 16, the audience braced for the standard farewell story. What came instead was something far darker. Cryptic posts appeared on her social media, hinting at physical assaults and a poisonous environment on set, and the trail of those posts led unmistakably toward a serious conflict with co-star Mark Harmon. A specific incident became the center of everything. Harmon's dog had bitten a crew member severely enough to require 15 stitches, and despite that, the dog continued appearing on set. Harmon's position as both the series lead and one of its executive producers meant that very few people felt empowered to challenge him on anything, let alone something that personal. Perrette wasn't among the people who stayed quiet, and by her own account, speaking up cost her. She posted publicly that she had lost her job for saying no, and even a full year after filming her last scene, she admitted to having recurring nightmares about her former co-star. The character of Abby was written out alive, rather than killed off, which gave the fandom something to hold on to, but nothing about that ending softened the reality of what Perrette had gone through behind the scenes. Jennifer Esposito came into season 14 as Special Agent Alexandra Quinn, sharp and battle-tested, a former training officer whose return to fieldwork suggested a character with years of story left to tell. Audiences watched her find her footing within the team, and started imagining what a long run for Quinn might look like. After one season, she was written out with a quiet explanation that she was stepping away to care for her ailing mother. Rumors spread quickly, including speculation that Esposito herself had health problems contributing to the exit, but she shut those down directly and without ambiguity, stating publicly that she was not ill. The actual reason had nothing to do with conflict or illness. Quinn was never designed to stay. The character had been built from the beginning as a one-season presence, a narrative bridge between cast changes rather than a permanent fixture, and Esposito had understood that from the time she signed on. She spoke genuinely well about the experience and the people she worked with, but she also noted something anyone familiar with network television would recognize. Actors come in to serve a specific story purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, the engagement ends. Quinn's brevity made her exit hurt more than it should have, because the audience had barely gotten to know her before she was gone. Sasha Alexander's departure from NCIS arrived at the end of season 2, and delivered one of the most genuinely shocking moments the series ever produced. Caitlin Todd had been one of the show's founding voices, a former Secret Service agent whose sharp instincts and firm moral compass helped give NCIS its early identity. The season 2 finale sent a sniper's bullet through that character without warning, courtesy of Ari Haswari, and audiences who had been following the show from the beginning felt the kind of loss that doesn't fully recede. What actually drove Alexander out had nothing to do with creative differences or behind-the-scenes conflict. She was breaking down under the physical weight of the schedule. 24 episodes per season, at 17 hours of filming per day, had pushed her past a sustainable limit, and she went to creator Donald Bellisario in tears to tell him she couldn't continue. Bellisario later addressed the situation without resentment, acknowledging that even if the departure technically constituted a contract breach, it hadn't come from a bad place. Kate Todd's death gave the series the kind of emotional credibility that most procedurals never develop, reset the stakes for every character who remained, and opened the door for the arc that would eventually bring Ziva David into the story. Alexander's run lasted barely 2 seasons, and the mark it left on the series outlasted almost everything that came after. Lauren Holly stepped into season 3 as director Jenny Shepard, arriving not as a new agent, but as Gibbs's superior, a woman with the authority and the complicated romantic history with him to make that dynamic genuinely interesting. The original offer was somewhere around 6 episodes, a limited presence to add texture at the organizational level of the show, but the writers kept extending her role until she had appeared in nearly 50 episodes across 2 seasons. None of that expansion made the long haul more satisfying. Holly admitted openly that after 2 years, the character had begun to feel like it was running in place, that the speed of network television had worn away the qualities that made Jenny worth playing. The departure of showrunner Donald Bellisario, who had personally recruited Holly for the role, sharpened that disconnection considerably. Jenny Shepard's actual exit landed with force. A shootout at a diner in season 5 left her dead, and Gibbs absorbing yet another devastating loss. Holly later said the death felt like relief rather than grief, that having the character written out gave her the closure and the freedom she had been lacking for the better part of a year. Michael Weatherly built Tony DiNozzo across 13 seasons, and by the time he left, DiNozzo had been through every emotional register the writers could find for him. The wisecracking new agent, the grieving colleague, the man quietly in love with someone who might not come back. Weatherly described the feeling at the end as a circle that had gone all the way around, which captures something real about what happens when a performer spends over a decade with one character. Burnout was part of what drove him out, but the pull of something new mattered at least as much. CBS had offered him the lead role in Bull, a legal drama built around the early career of Dr. Phil McGraw, and that represented a chance to step fully outside DiNozzo's shadow for the first time in 13 years. The writers gave him a send-off that honored the investment. In the season 13 finale, DiNozzo learned he had a daughter with Ziva, who had been believed dead, and he walked away from NCIS to raise her in Paris. Weatherly has never fully closed the door on a return, posting photographs with the caption, "They ended up in Paris," and keeping the fan speculation running consistently in the years since his exit. Duane Henry joined the series in season 13 as MI6 officer Clayton Reeves and became a series regular the following year, bringing an international dimension to the team that genuinely felt different from anything the show had done before. His character carried humor, depth, and a sense of unwritten history that many viewers wanted to see explored over multiple seasons. The season 15 finale gave him a death instead. Reeves stepped in front of a gunman's bullet to save Abby Scudo during a mugging gone wrong, dying in a scene that carried twice the emotional weight because it arrived at the same moment as Pauley Perrette's departure from the series. The decision traced back to showrunner Gary Glassberg, who had created the Reeves character specifically to broaden the show's perspective, and whose unexpected death in 2016 left the writers without anyone who had a clear, long-term vision for what the character should become. Without that anchor, Reeves drifted narratively, and the decision was made to write him out in a way that could serve Abby's goodbye. Henry accepted it with genuine grace, describing his final scenes as the best work he had ever done on screen, and saying simply that, in this industry, you live in a world where you never know what comes next. Emily Wickersham arrived in season 11 as Eleanor Bishop, under the weight of expectations that would have challenged anyone. Ziva David's departure had left a gap that the audience hadn't finished grieving, and Bishop, a former NSA analyst stepping into fieldwork, faced skepticism from viewers who weren't ready to redirect their loyalty. She earned her place slowly and without shortcuts. The analytical precision, the friendships built with McGee and Torres over multiple seasons, and the gradual transformation from outsider to trusted team member all gave Bishop a story worth following. 8 seasons in, the finale staged her exit as a deliberate act of sacrifice, Bishop engineering her own fall from grace to disappear into an undercover classified mission, a farewell designed to feel temporary. Wickersham confirmed through Instagram that the departure was real, describing television as finicky and weird, and thanking the production with evident sincerity. Shortly after leaving, she stepped away from acting to focus on her family, and in December 2021, she and actor James Badgedale welcomed their first child. Mark Harmon spent 18 seasons as Leroy Jethro Gibbs, and in that time, the character accumulated the kind of audience attachment that very few television figures ever develop. The famous rules, the gravelly silences, the leadership that people either respected immediately or eventually came around to. Gibbs was the organizing principle of the entire series, and Harmon's performance made that feel earned across nearly 2 decades. Season 19 brought a quieter ending than anyone expected. Surviving an explosion and spending time reflecting on his choices, Gibbs stayed in Alaska rather than return to Washington, drawn to a peace the job had never been able to give him. Behind that ending was the straightforward reality of a 70-year-old actor managing physically demanding production schedules, while simultaneously carrying executive producer responsibilities across NCIS and its spin-offs. Showrunner Stephen Binder chose his words carefully after the departure, telling the audience that you should never count Leroy Jethro Gibbs out, which kept a return arc possible without committing to one. Maria Bello came into season 15 as forensic psychologist Jacqueline Sloan and immediately operated differently from everyone else on the team. No badge, no chase sequences, just the ability to read people with unsettling accuracy. And over 3 seasons, that skill included reading Gibbs in ways that nobody in 18 years of the series had fully managed. The slow-building connection between them gave the show one of its more quietly affecting subplots, and Bello described the dynamic as fun, layered, and full of possibilities. Her contract covered 3 seasons, and when season 18 arrived, she chose not to renew it, citing a desire to move toward new projects rather than any tension with the production. The farewell episode sent Sloan and Gibbs to Afghanistan to rescue kidnapped girls, and at the end of that mission, Sloan decided to remain behind, committing herself to humanitarian work rather than returning to NCIS headquarters. Bello posted an emotional tribute afterward, calling the cast and crew the kindest and most generous group of people she had ever worked alongside. Cote de Pablo's exit from NCIS in season 11 remains the departure that the show's most dedicated audience is least willing to stop debating, which is itself a measure of how much Ziva David meant to the series. When Kate Todd died in season 2, the show answered with de Pablo's Mossad officer, a character whose combat training, complicated loyalty, and slow-burning chemistry with Tony DiNozzo gave the series some of its most emotionally resonant arcs. Losing her felt sudden and unexplained, and David McCallum captured the confusion that spread through the cast when he said publicly that he didn't understand how a leading actress in a worldwide hit could simply vanish days before production started. De Pablo initially offered only personal reasons, but years later she was considerably more direct, explaining that the scripts had stopped giving Ziva the respect the character had earned, that valuable story ground was being abandoned, and that the situation didn't feel fair to the role or to the audience. The writers later declared Ziva dead in an off-screen event, which deepened the frustration among fans, before eventually bringing her back in a short arc, revealing she had faked her death and giving the character a measure of resolution that her original exit had denied. Whether that arc fully settled the account is still being argued, which says everything about what de Pablo built across 11 seasons of one of the most watched crime dramas in television history.